Mm-hmm. I'm from here originally. Yeah. What all? Yeah. Almost done with the house. I'm saying that. But it,
Yeah, those last couple weeks have been.
They've been dragging.
Almost there.
We've been slacking.
Wow.
A lot of other stuff going on. I'm trying to plan a wedding as well. That's it.
And work. We don't even have the little cute ones, like.
Not that kind of work.
That's a lot of work too.
Yeah.
At like 4 in the morning.
Yeah, at least we get to sleep through the night. We really shouldn't be complaining.
If you can get a solid, uninterrupted 6+ hours of sleep one night, then you have nothing to complain about. Someday I will see that again. Alrighty. So it's time we get started. Okay. So I know most of you, Melissa Gregg, and I am here because of real estate investing. I have always kind of thought, well, this is something that might be cool to do. And I spent at least 15 years on again, off again, researching it and studying the market. And then one day, two different times, we kind of just like stumbled upon things, and then it happened. So hopefully you can not end up stumbling, and I can tell you a little bit about some of the things that go into finding property and making a success of it without some of the challenging lessons that I've learned along the way. There are many types of real estate investing, and I have dabbled in almost all of them. So I can say that shiny object syndrome is not the most effective way to get good at something and to make money, but it has worked for me so far. Defining your market, figuring out what you're passionate about is really a strong place to start. The cost of entry, I kind of wish my 2 classes today were flip-flopped, because I would talk about how you can save your money and then you can buy a real estate investment property. But I will say I have a few things on there. Having a good lender that you work with, I know having a strong team and you've got that as real estate agents, so that's not probably as big of a deal. Finding property that's worthy of your investment money, that's probably where you want to spend the most of our time here, and resources for learning more.
Melissa, would you say that there are some lenders that are better for investing in properties than other lenders?
Absolutely. So it really depends on the property. It also depends on what you can show for in like your personal finance stuff. But the guys who are inside banks, and the banks are of the variety where they can make some of their own decisions, are far more likely to take on some of the strange and wild project ideas that investors come along with. And then private money loans and contract for deed financing are two other great ways to work. But those lenders who go searching through different loan options and make arrangements and are not an actual lender, but are a broker of loans, they tend to not get it quite as much, and work with it. But we'll go back to lending when we get there. So real estate investing, we call it REI. I think that's what you see on my calendar. That's what you see in the bigger pockets and whatnot. I had just splatted all these things. There's property types, there's usage types, and there's strategies, and sometimes they kind of look like the same thing. So property types, you got your single family, your multifamily, your land, your condos or townhouses, which, by the way, for beginners are way nice to do because you don't have to worry about the exterior and the systems and all of that. But then you do have to pay the association fee. So there's kind of a flip on that. Commercial and work with AJ, talk to him about those. That is the one area I haven't touched yet. I say. Mobile home, never actually bought, but definitely did evaluation on it. New construction and luxury are some examples there. Usage types, you've got your rental, you've got your Airbnb or VRBO, short-term vacation rental, student housing, furnished, pet-friendly, house hacking. There's a couple different interpretations of that phrase. I think you would probably be considered a house hacker right now, since you're saying that you're just about finished and you're gonna put your house on the market. Other people, house hacking is getting into a multifamily where they live in one of the units. So kind of, like buying the dumpiest property you can and moving into it, that would be house hacking. Agricultural and special needs housing was one that I was a listing agent and had a seller or a buyer come on, and that was their strategy. I thought that was kind of interesting. Strategies: land development, syndication, sell, rent, short-term vacation, house hacking, live-in renovation, flipping, contract for deed, private money. So there's all kinds of ways to make money doing this. Being strategic, having an idea, and one of the things about strategies, I will say, is when my husband and I buy property, we always have more than one strategy in mind. Like, this is what we're going to do, and if something starts to go wrong with that, we'll take this route or this route or this route. Having multiple exit strategies, having multiple ways that you can make money with this project is kind of always a piece of the work. So this is my husband. I was like to tell people, what do you do? Well, what do I do? I buy things and I sell them for more than I paid. So that's fun. Like fun way to talk about what you're doing with real estate investing. Defining your market. We kind of talked already a little about strategies and property types and have that huge list. Who are you? Who's your end user? Who's going to pay you for this privilege? Location is huge. In my experience, I've had two primary locations, and as soon as you start varying from that, you start to kind of go, oh, now I need to learn the market, and now I need to get familiar, and now I need to. There's a lot of homework to be done. So have a location, like have some scope to what you're going to do. Property and the seller type. The seller type is huge. I think okay, let me talk about seller types. So there's got to be another slide there. I developed this class for sharing more with the public, and I'm kind of just using those slides and had it all prepared and ready to present 2 months ago. So I ran through them and I double checked, but let me talk about sellers for a minute. So you've got your for sale by owner, where as real estate agents, we're constantly like, call them and ask to list their house. Well, what about calling them and asking to buy their house? And we tease. I have an accidental purchase of a house that came from doing that. Like, working the for sale by owners, and I was like, this is a decent property. Let's do this. It'll be fun flip. Then there's the so for sale by owners and estates. Those are my two kind of favorites. Estate where people who loved and cared for the house, loved and cared for the house, and then they grew old and the house didn't get as much love and care because they weren't able to, and then they died, and here's this property that's stuck in Granniesville and hasn't really had the TLC it needs for a while, and it's ugly and it's stinky and it's not staged right because they either left it how it was when Granny died, and oh, there's the medical bed, or there's the like special toilet adapter thing, whatever, so the stuff isn't there. So estate, and then another thing that happens sometimes with these estate homes is they go on the market here because the kids are like, oh, I have all these memories, and mom's house is totally worth it. And I've heard all these things about the Rochester market being hot, and so I'm listed here. And reality check, when we give you a range, we don't really know what the property's condition is and all of that. And we go in and it's a granny house and it's aged. It should be at the bottom of the range, but they're listed at the top of the range. And then it gets those like 100 days on market, and nobody looks at those houses anymore. And it comes down in price, and they are just ripe for that super low ball. I'm just gonna take this off your hands, and you don't have to worry about it anymore, and life will be good. So that's a fun seller to work with. Let's see. Okay, so there's for sale by owners. There's the estates. There is a slide. Let's just keep going. Find your sweet spot. So you'll see, like, I'm very enthusiastic about real estate investing in general, and that's part of probably how I didn't find my sweet spot. The needs in your area, so like putting student housing in a place without a college wouldn't really fit a need, that kind of thing. So think about what the needs are. Think about what your skills are. If you are skilled in contract negotiation but can't operate a drill, then that's not where you don't want to be doing flips. You want to be doing rentals, like that kind of thing. So pay attention to kind of all of those, and sometimes YouTube University will help you with the skills part. Just saying. And this one, let's think about your time. Sometimes buying real estate, an investment property, is buying another job. You want to buy another job? Great. Okay. So right now I'm in a live-in renovation, and it's painful. And the effort is like hours every day, because when you don't work on it, it doesn't actually move forward. So high effort, renovating, and then the vacation rentals, the amount of turnovers, the tenant turnover, the more frequent, the more work you're doing. I have somebody from my monthly Thursday night group is focused on Airbnb, and when I shared this condensed form of this with her, she said, yes, running an Airbnb is another job. The booking and the cleaning and all of the stuff that you're going to do with that. So low effort, make a mortgage. You got some money, and somebody else wants to buy a property or fix up a property, and they say, I'm looking for money to do this because they're in that situation where I don't really, I can do this. I just need the capital, and to convince the bank about the capital is on me and my income that I maybe can't justify, but here's the property and here's the opportunity. So, getting somebody, making a mortgage is a super easy one. Syndication contract for deed, if you're selling something where you can, sell it and also get 5% interest over 10 years time or 5 years time, and that regular income, that's kind of nice to do. So there's kind of a spectrum there. You make your money when you buy, you get paid when you sell. This is very true. Buying value is the biggest deal. Okay, you want to talk about funding. When you don't have cash to cover your property acquisition, here are 3 fun ways to do it. Home equity on your primary residence. So if you're position where you built up some equity, that's great. You get a mortgage on the new property. That's going to limit your opportunity to buy to a property where it's gonna get past the appraiser, and it's not going to end up in a bidding war because let's face it, a quick to close cash offer is how a lot of those bidding wars end up going to. Most lenders, if you're not going to live in the property, want 25% down. So shop your lenders, know your lenders, work with different people, and we all know there are plenty of great lenders out there, and when you're in real estate, you probably have at least a coffee date type relationship with a handful of them. So talking to them about having the idea of a mortgage on your property. The multi-units are going to be the easiest, I think, for that, simply because the lenders are going to look more at the income of the property and what's already going on with it on a multi-unit. Then whereas if you're like, I have the single family home I want to buy for investment property, then they're like, single family, I can loan on it all of these ways, but they can't look at the income of it. Because single family home, it doesn't inherently have income. That private money loan, friends and family who want to invest with you. We have an agent in the office here who has built his business tremendously by getting a pool of people who believe in him and his acquisition and renovation process, and has funded projects by a little bit here and there. And one thing I'll say about private money loans is if you want to be on the receiving end, if you want to fund a deal with private money loan, you need to create a convincing proposal with info about the property, the plan, and your credentials. So I have seen investors ask for money with 10-page glossy, full of pictures, resume, the whole 9 yards. And I've seen them with approximately a 10-word email. Guess which ones got funded? So throwing out the address and, yeah, I totally want to do this. Here's the address. Can you help me with the money? No, that's the answer. So, and also what's that you've heard with them, what's in it for me? Make sure you answer that question in that proposal. So what are you offering, like the length of time that you want to have their money? What's your strategy for getting their money back to them? What's the interest rate you're offering? How are you going to collect what are the terms? So anyway.
So do you have any proposals that you can share about disclosing personal identities?
I might.
That's kind of like a template, so to speak.
I might. No, because the pictures of the family and the credentials and the whole bit. No. But yeah, like address, couple pictures of the property, a plan for it, what's your portfolio look like already? Oh, how much of your own equity are you putting into the project? So there's just a ton of questions that you should answer if you were going to do such a proposal. And I would be happy to review it and give you feedback, or review it and be convinced. So, you know, there's there's options there. We can talk about the fundamentals of investing. This comes from Wealth Can't Wait. One of the last slides. Buy value. So in your market, you should know what is value. And my Thursday night group, they will tell you that there's not much out there. We have a dozen relatively active investors, and it was observed last month that I can't think of anybody who's actually bought a property this in 2019 yet. So in terms of Rush, actually, yeah, a local property, let me clarify, a local property. The Rochester market right now, the value is very hard to come by. And so, talk about that in a few minutes. Maintain a margin of safety. So if the renovation is going to require a little more than you expected, or time more than you expected, covering the carrying costs. If you're going to have a little more vacancy than expected, make sure that you don't end up in financial trouble when you commit to this property with rose-colored glasses on. So, you know, have some margin built in. By only where you know the market. In our household, there are two markets. It's Rochester and Cook County, which is way north up by Lake Superior. And those are places that we frequent and look at the market all the time. Invest only if you have the cash flow to cover fixed monthly expenses. So that's kind of margin of safety and that same thing. Okay, here we go. This is my awesome list of, I already talked about FSBOs. I talked about estate sales. Foreclosures. Sometimes you see foreclosures on the MLS. Those usually go like hotcakes. So you probably want to get in. Otherwise, if you have a bank relationship, ask them what's in their portfolio and where they like to unload any of it. And you can go at that from the I'm a real estate agent, and you can go at that from the I'm a real estate investor perspectives. Divorce. You hear about something, you know, and it's unfortunate. And do you need any assistance in your real estate situation in that case? Condemned houses. So you see those papers on the door every so often, and sometimes they're eviction notices, sometimes they're foreclosure notices, and sometimes they're condemnations. Condemned property. So I actually lived by two of them a few years back. They came at different times. You see this paper go up on the tower. You're like, oh, interesting. You know, you're out walking around your neighborhood and paying attention, and there's paper on the door. What's going on there? And so then you make sure that's on your walking path in the future, and you kind of like keep a close eye on that property, and then you can you know, when you're walking by or driving by, you see the guys in the hazmat suits and a big dumpster in the driveway. Well, gee, that would be condemned rather than, you know, I'll go up and read the notice on the door at some point when you can be discreet as well. So the house across the street, we didn't end up getting, but the house across the street came up with a condemned notice. Then the hazmat guys came in, and the like trucks, and they took a bunch of junk out. And then one day, my husband happened to be home, and there was just a nice looking lady who was like tinkering in the garage, pulling some stuff out, putting it on the driveway. And he wandered on over and said, hey, you know, what's going on with this house? You know, we live right across the street and I'm curious. And she said, well, Mrs. Smith is in assisted living or whatever. We've gotten Mrs. Smith out of this house because, well, she was no longer physically capable of taking care of things, and she was kind of a pack rat, and she had cats, and she was no longer really taking care of them, and they were using the whole house as their litter box, and it's kind of a mess. And so they stripped out the carpet, and they stripped out the lower kitchen cabinets, and they took all kinds of junk out of there. And this person that my husband and I'm talking to was the caseworker. And the next task on her list for this case was get the house sold so they could fund the rest of Mrs. Smith's time in this assisted living place. My husband says, well, I might be interested in buying it. I can, you know, put the flooring back in and bring it up to a condition where I would be happy to bring in a nice new neighbor for myself, right? And so he had this conversation and kind of started this relationship with this caseworker. By the time we actually we had a purchase agreement, she was like, we were all ready to go. It was everything but signed because this is one of those situations where I have to go through court or whatever. And the caseworker went and got a different job. And so then they got passed to a new caseworker, and that new caseworker had an investor friend who they were bringing in. And so then we ended up in a competing situation, and that's the house that got away. But when you see moving trucks, those are another good, like, key, like, okay, you know, something's going on. Letter writing is currently kind of the favorite of my investor group. They don't get a whole lot of response, but with I don't know that I have numbers I can give you. I've heard that they'll get like calls on 1% of their letters.
Who are they writing letters to? Homeowners?
Is it all just direct mail?
Direct mail.
One side house kind of thing?
One Slayer House kind of thing. So, one of the strategies on that is to write letters to anybody who has a property and a taxpayer address that are different. And so those, like the woman in the group who has Airbnb as her strategy, she can get letters all the time. Want to sell your property? No, thank you. I'm making good money on it and I'm happy with it. But yeah, like using tax records to.
So they just stifle through all the tax records to find.
Oh, there are
there
strategies
programs?
with realists that you can use to do that. Ah, yes.
Is that on the slide?
It's not because my investor group doesn't have access to Realist. My public presentation of this one doesn't have access to Realist. Actually, when I signed up to be a master faculty person, I said, Realist, strategies for Realists that come to me, right? And they were like, yeah, great. Okay, master faculty, we'll do that. And then they came back and said, how about investment property? Okay, great. That's fine too. So yes, I can teach you that on Realist. We'll keep tabs on time. Maybe cruise to the rest of this. I can pull that up. Yeah. Letter writing, lingering on the MLS is where I, you know, like price drop. It just sits there. For sale by owner, burned out landlord. So, you know, you find out somebody who's just like, I just got notice that my favorite tenant is moving on. Now, what am I going to do with that place? That kind of thing. Totally swoop in, find them back. Watch for falling prices, court ordered sale, or condemned, court ordered, same thing. Networking, get out. Bigger Pockets has a network piece, forum type thing, as well as educational stuff. So that's a great site for finding out stuff. If you're just getting started, seek out the help of a seasoned real estate investor and or qualified financial coach. If you're unsure where to invest, money left on the sidelines does nothing other than wither with inflation, get worth less over time. Rochester building safety. So in Rochester, we have all of these really crazy rules for landlords. You can go down in the lobby of building safety. They have this like pillar and it has window requirements for egress that are required for landlords. It has the landlord and tenant state pamphlet, which I'm sure you can get in other places too, but printed and physical and you can touch it. They have, if you want to be a landlord in Rochester, you have to take their 8-hour class and fair housing and safe properties. I don't know, whatever. So they have a wealth of information and most of it is free to take. When you go to actually start a property as a rental, you have to get their blessing on it and that's all kinds of fun. They'll do an inspection. Yes.
I have not personally worked with, I guess, really rental properties in Rochester. In Mankato, there's only allowed to have so many per block. How hard is it to get a rental license on a property, a single family home here?
I've never had any trouble. However, when you're in the pre-purchase state,
Correct.
you go to planning and
Correct.
zoning
Correct.
and you say, will there be any issue with turning this into a rental?
Okay. So there aren't like those
There are
super
no
heavy restrictions.
heavy restrictions.
Correct.
Once upon a
It's
time,
impossible.
Kutsky and Slattery both
Okay.
had too many rentals
Sure.
and the quality of the neighborhood was going down and they put some rules in place. And those rules have aged out now.
Okay.
Last I heard. And when I went and I inquired of planning and zoning on a property for something in the last 2 years, they were like, yeah, as long as it meets its home style and proper zone,
Sure.
it's gonna be fine. So a single family house intended to be a single family rental in a single family zone is perfectly fine.
Okay.
Is the last I heard from them.
Yeah, and I can talk to them for more. I just was
Yep.
curious.
Yep.
Thank you.
You need a rental license with the Airbnb.
No,
Ah.
that's different.
There have been a number of forums with city council and Airbnb not Airbnb representatives, but people who are
Doing it.
doing it, who have willingly spoken up, and it's not a rule yet, but yes, if you want to CYA, you put a rental certificate on that property.
Right.
And the current discussion is if you have a multi-unit, you don't do Airbnb with that. Maximum of 2 units. Is it 2 or 3? I don't remember. This group has had some of that discussion. That information after those forums comes into that group, and there's been some sharing going on. So you get hooked up in there and find out. And you can search the background on it. But yeah, they don't want, if you do multi-unit and you're Airbnb, and then you're gray area going towards hotel.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's single family, you have a rental certificate on it, so it meets building safety's requirements, and
It's like you might
it's
as well do it.
legit for rental. The fact that you're using it short term versus long term, they're not getting too fussy about that. So that's kind of where it's at right now. Best approach is to go with that. bigger pockets, I was saying, they don't have as much of the local specific. They do have all kinds of how do you value the properties, the calculators, things to think about. They have like just a ton of educational information, educational resources, as well as the networking piece there. And books, you are certainly familiar with. So I think we have a chance. Let's go to Realist, huh?
Let's do it.
And it probably is going to start something. I'll leave that up there too long. All right. So you don't know how to grab a download from Realist of whatever kind of fun thing. I had a guy who had called me and was convinced he needed at least 50 units in Rochester, and he wanted to buy big apartments, and I think I talked him down out of the 50 units to like, well, let's just see what we can find and think about anything that's that tips the four units plus, and we can package them together or whatever. And so I went out to Realist and I said, I want Rochester, I want four or more units, and kind of tweaked it and went through and got a download, and I sent a letter writing campaign out. And I had one guy with 9 units call me and like, oh, I got this property, I'd be interested in talking to your buyer, whoever, and never went anywhere, but I had that connection then. So, all right.
Seriously, what's the added benefit that even if your buyer doesn't buy that, you now know a potential coup in the future?
A potential seller.
Absolutely, that's awesome.
Yeah. All right, so quick search is never going to work for finding the kind of thing that you want to do here. So my search, I'm going to start with Rochester because that's where we are currently. Search yet. I don't need either of those. Let's go to, oh, I don't need edit. I have it. But edit attributes. So here you can see, these are all of the different attributes that you can search on. There's, let's see, owner information, taxpayer address, owner occupied. There you go. So owner occupied equals no.
You open a whole new door for me.
Ah, good. That is the whole purpose of coming to a class like this, right? Is to open a new door.
Aaron's gonna become a professional squatter now that does people
So yeah, owner occupied equals no is one. Let's just do that. And is it gonna do this for me? Okay. Oh, you can, I should probably delete a whole bunch of these things, but depending on what you're looking for. Okay, let's see. 3+ bedrooms. We'll just make something. Owner occupied is no. Rochester, 3+ bedrooms, owner occupied is no. I don't know what it is. With Realist, you're allowed, I believe it's 5,000 properties to download per month.
Where's the sound?
Okay.
Per month?
That was a year. It's a month?
The notice comes up every time you hit download, so
Okay, I thought it was a year.
let's do that. let's see. I need to simplify this. So, it's gonna have,
Real estate not accessible to the public, is it?
nope.
You pay for that being an agent.
Um,
And your fees for it.
I'm gonna simplify it from Rochester just to Southwest Rochester by 55902 and let's see if I cut it in, I just did 1/4 of them instead of what it was before, will that get me to 100,000? Cause this thing can be slow when it,
Yes, it can, but you're teaching us awesome stuff.
if it works to get you what you're looking for. All right, so how many is still loading? It'll tell me in a few minutes. So on my sheet here, I have it set up, county address, municipality, obviously that's important. Who is the owner? So you can write your letters very specific. I have taxable market value, number of bedrooms, the CREV sale date. So that's the last time it's sold. And one of the things I've done before is I've said, has it sold in the last 5 years, for example, as a way to, try to find people who are more likely to have equity, more likely to be interested in selling, whatever. Beds, baths, square feet, age of the house, size of the land. Okay, so I have 540 results, and then you can hit export. I want to export this result. And then you have the opportunity again to say, what do you want on your grid? And it is per month, 5,000 per month. And so then you've got your all these
So would you
down.
wanna like get rid of a whole bunch of those toggles, so it's just exporting the address and the owner's name, that way you can put it into the thing?
You could, but I would actually export the property address and the taxpayer address, because you're going to mail to the taxpayer address, but you're probably going to reference the, like, with
Got it.
regard to this property
Got it.
that you own. And if you get a call from them, you don't want to be like a total bumbling idiot. So I would want to have a lot of information on that export, because I can open up my spreadsheet and say, okay, I got your name, I got the property address, and now I have some good information without having to go to multiple other sources to come up with that.
Okay.
So I generally export way more than I probably should. But I like, take it all, give me all the information. And then I can go through and I'll like, I'll go through and I'll say, oh, I'm not worth my time to write these people a letter based on what I see here. Oh, and the owner name is the same on this one and this one. This is like, look at how many of these are owned by the same company. I can send one letter regarding the many properties that you have, and just, hey, if you're ever looking to sell, whatever, but that's going to go less far than the ones where it's like a one-off. So I was looking for those where they own 1 or 2 properties. So once I get that whole spreadsheet, I go in, I cherry pick and I look at it and I color code it and highlight them. And so the 25 that are worth my stamp, they've got the green highlighting and then if I hear back from any of them, then that changes the color. And and then I'm going to do a second mailing 2 weeks later to really like, hey, I'm serious here. And so make sure I go through. Yeah, I've got like strategies like that. And that's important. In real estate investing, one thing you'll hear about is the yellow letter. So what they say is if your letter, you get this envelope that's like auto addressed on there's a label sticker and I don't know what's on the return address. I'm not gonna open it, I'm just gonna junk mail. Right? And so hand addressing your envelopes, not having the, keeping your return address very simple. So it's not like, I don't know who this is, or this is coming from some business, but you got a hand addressed envelope, which is why I say like, I'll send like 25. I won't send like 1,000 like some people will. And then the yellow letter is, don't print it on a fancy letterhead, just get like a legal pad and write a simple letter. And it looks like you have specifically targeted their house and you're interested in that property, and that doesn't ever get you anywhere. I have, like I said, in my letter writing practices, I had like one potential seller come back to me, and with regard to a property they were maybe interested in selling, and didn't go anywhere. But I've sent the yellow letter type thing myself for properties where I'm like, oh, wouldn't that be sweet to like, let's collect all 4 in this area and we can turn it into something, like crazy project ideas. So let's try to letter all those property owners. Well, you get the rule of thumb is 1 to 2% response on your letter writing. And if you have gone to any classes on farming and like being consistent with the neighborhood or something, which you can develop a farm out of realist too, same thing, pick a subdivision and download that list or whatever. But the idea that, you have to be consistent. You have to go back and do it again. You have to go back and do it again. 6 months is the time that they say farming starts to show up and come to fruition. You get results if you every month have a postcard or a letter to your whole farm, and anytime there's a property for sale in there, you most certainly would be checking it out. You might be door knocking. You, if somebody in the office gets a property in there, like, open house for me, please. I want that to be my farm. I want to focus on that area. Get me in there. Get my name in there. Send the letters. Be real specific and diligent with, pick a neighborhood, and that's there. So real estate investors, this idea on Realist is, it's a different kind of farm. Picking property that are not owner occupied, or if you could somehow get if you could somehow figure out age of the owners, farm the soon-to-be estate sale property. I don't know. There's so many different ideas.
How often is Realist updated? How often is Realist updated as far as owner records and stuff like that?
Realist lags behind tax a little bit, but it's not bad enough that I would be real concerned. When Realist does have MLS stuff, so MLS listing indicator, MLS photo indicator, if the property's on the MLS, obviously you stay away from it, right? You go through the proper real estate channels to look at the property and whatnot. You don't send letters to the owners. So with the MLS indicator and such, that's an easy way to do that, and that's part of why. I don't know what I was exporting last time, that's the information I wanted, but yeah, create your list of what variables do you want on your export and get that information.
Going back to your scenario where you had a buyer who wanted to buy a bunch of properties and you found one that had 9, you said, but it didn't really go anywhere. At that point, you were essentially working the buyer was for sale by owner, right?
A seller?
Yeah, a seller was for sale by owner.
Yeah.
And so how likely was your commission on the table for that conversation?
We didn't get that far.
Because you had 9 properties.
Oh, yeah. No, we did get that far. He told me the seller told me that, if he could net X dollars, that would make him happy. And so I needed to figure out what I should bring the buyer at, to pull my piece out of there, and handle closing costs and whatnot. So that was if you could bring me somebody who would pay, let's just say it was $1 million for these 9 doors in a hot downtown location, then anything above that is game to closing companies and,
That's what they need to net.
so then it's up to me to say, well, what do we want, like, write an offer at $1,050,000 and that would cover up the closing costs and I get a nice piece out of that too, so let's call it good, like that was the place to, the seller kind of instructed me as to how to have that conversation. Buyer's gonna have to pay your fees, but I wanna walk away with this.
So then you would essentially write 9 purchase agreements, or would you write 1 purchase agreement included 9 addresses?
It was
As if it's financed or not.
it was a couple of multi-units that were the 5-unit and 2 duplexes or something like that. So it would have been one purchase agreement, but the PIDs would have been right there, and it would have been viewed as a single transaction, just
Multi-properties.
multiple properties. And the other thing about that one in particular is the buyer had told me that he was in for cash up to a certain amount, and he had plenty of friends who were interested as well, and were thinking about creating a buyer's pool. So he was like, have cash, we'll move forward quickly. The right property. So I never found the right property. I also found out that he had given that story and that suggested hustle to several commercial agents in town, and it wasn't gonna be worth my time anyway.
I dealt with an investor who I showed a bunch of properties to, and that one young one, and who worked for an investor company or corporation or whatever, and it's like, oh, once we find the right properties, then I'll submit it to them. They're the ones who provide the financing, yada yada da. The big waste of time.
Yeah.
Huge. Like, no, dude, you never budge nothing.
When you're working with people like that, is there a way to, do you get them pre-approved? Do you get a letter to know before you put all this time and effort in that? Because people can say anything.
And there was a company and everything.
I will tell you this, when it's private people, the one thing I learned before I was ever licensed in real estate was there was a gentleman that literally followed me home because he found out that my husband had gotten a job in Shakopee and we were going to be moving, and it was a property he wanted. So I come home one day and this is when we lived in Chatfield. I came home from the grocery store and this guy is parking right behind my van. I had put my car, I went in, and he's like, oh, and he's telling me the story. Now, here's the thing. I kind of knew of him, but I didn't know him. And he wanted to come in and see the house because he had cash. He was going to offer you all this money, da 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 da. Well, you're kind of dumb when you're not in real estate, and we knew our property was worth quite a bit, but we hadn't even gone that route. We were still considering the job offer. So I brought him in and showed him the house and da 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 da, and he wanted it. And this guy found out later, realtors wouldn't even show him houses anymore. He had no money. He had investment deals. As his story grew, we knew he was full of it. But this guy would show up at these nice properties because, I want to do this for my wife, and da 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 da. I've got investments I'm ready to close out, and I got cash. So, we found out, thank goodness, early enough. Plus, my husband ended up not taking the job because he got a better offer to stay. where he was. However, with these investors that are like that, how do you vet them? I mean, you must vet them before you start doing all this work, don't you?
Yes. I, for that one, I was willing to do my letter writing campaign because I knew that there was plenty of benefit for myself.
Right.
With this Thursday's monthly group, I actually have a full list of people where, if a good multi-unit came available, I have plenty of people that I could take to it as potential buyers. So I wasn't like, this might have been the kick in the pants to do the letter writing and to reach out to people who own multi-units. It wasn't a situation where I was banking on this guy in any way, you know? For investors, I've honestly, in 3 years now, where I'm like the investor group facilitator and I put myself out there as like, talk to me about investment property, I have represented 0 investor buyers all the way to closing. Why? Because 2 things. 1, investor buyers want to see the house now. And
In all of them.
anytime, if something comes up and it's a good investment, they need to be the first one through the door and it needs to be quick. And so what they do is they call their top 3 favorite real estate agents. I've shown property to plenty of investors and I've kind of like pulled back from doing that so much because, you know, they've got their top 3 real estate agents to like show them the property and, you know, get in the door, and they have no loyalty. It's just a who's available to show it right now. And the strategy that we even talk about on those is go to the listing agent. The few times that I've gotten a fantastic deal on investment property before I was an agent, I went to the listing agent and they have so much vested interest in representing both sides. Like, sweet, double the commission, and I can make this work. Oh, and I can help make sure that you write the offer in the terms that are going to get accepted. And and you went to the listing agent and your offer didn't get accepted, and then because some crazy person offered way more than it was worth, and then they figured that out during the process and they didn't actually close it. Well, guess who the listing agent's going to call when the deal falls through? They're going to call the person that came with them to buy it, and they're going to make that deal happen, and they can look like the savior to their seller. That, you know, even though that one didn't go through, I got one. Like, so there's so many the strategies for investment property buying. And you saw my list, like, talk to the bank, work your neighborhood, network. They don't just come to an agent and say, let's buy off the MLS. Actually, I have represented one investor buyer. It wasn't because of that, but some friends of my sons, and they have more money than they know what to do with, and they've owned the property for 1.5 years and have not quite put a tenant in it yet because, well, maybe I'll, for tax reasons, call it a home office that's not in my home. Like, okay, whatever. So yes, that was an investor buyer that I have represented. I have one, but no, those are painful clients.
Yeah, so he called me, I remember we were working on our first project, and he calls me and I get this phone call. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I'm a pretty green agent at the time. And just listening to him, I'm like, oh yeah, you know, and so I start showing him properties in Mankato. He has the name on his truck, he's got a website. I did quite a bit of thorough searching, you know. I'm having Zach come with me to meet him a couple times because, you know, stranger, danger. And I mean, yeah, I do, because that's how I sold half my houses last year were strangers. So after I kind of showed him enough houses to where he didn't want to buy anything or present anything to his company that he's working with, I'm like, okay, this is bullshit. Like, no, I'm not just going to keep And then
You're not a
again,
tour guide.
correct.
Yes.
For an hour at each showing where you're taking measurements and doing this and this and
Right.
this, it's like,
That's why I don't show houses to any of my buyers until they come, just regular buyers until they have a pre-approved letter.
Right.
Because, and I tell them that up front.
right.
I
and it's like,
say, I need to know the price range, not only that you want to spend, but what the bank says you can spend. Because I'm not gonna take you, if your limit is 300,000, I'm not gonna show you $400,000 houses because it just would be fun to look at. Go to the opens,
Yep.
do any of that, you have my blessing, but I'm not a tour guide. I tell them that flat out, and they kind of
Yeah.
look at me and they go, well, that's fair. I mean, I don't
that's a
care
good way
if
to say
they,
it,
I don't
though.
care if they
Yeah.
go look at them, but I'm good to my people.
So then
But
with
we gotta be
investors,
good,
it
but
would
we
be-
got both, we all
Yeah.
have sweat in the game and it's gotta be an even playing field. I'm a farm girl. I
I
can
like
say
it.
it like it is.
I do too.
And
Yeah.
guess what? With any situation, I'm assuming like with these investment people too, there's fits and there's not fits.
Mhm.
Just like
Yes.
with existing.
Correct.
You have good fits and you have bad fits. And if you're a bad fit for a client or they're a bad fit for you, it has gotta be, I am learning, it's gotta be way better to walk away than put yourself through that stress.
I have had like 3 or 4 listings
Mhm.
that I can attribute to that. So it's not for
Right.
nothing,
Yeah,
but yeah.
you just have to be careful.
all the way
It's the
through.
same as, a regular buyer, an investment buyer. You just have to be maybe even more careful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Agent beware instead of buyer beware.
All right, so that was the time for investment properties. And now,
There you go.
yes, so if you were not planning to stay for both, now's the time.
For staying, but can we do like a 1-minute bathroom?
Yeah, go.
What's the next one?
The next one is
Money.
budgeting your irregular income.
Oh, I better stay for that. Mine couldn't be more irregular. Well, I mean, it's a good thing I got the spouse who's very regular.